in governance, eventually you want to hand the keys over to them with useful voting mechanisms. But then there's the vast majority of everyone else who doesn't believe or doesn't know. And again, on a very practical level, the best I think we can do is try to make the easiest to use platforms for existing developers to develop the applications that somebody's going to come to, not necessarily because the system it's on can't be useful, and because it works as smoothly as their Uber or their Airbnb. Because without actual usage, what are you governing anyway?
Yeah, exactly. So actually, it's a really nice segue to the next question. Professor, yes, of course.
So first of all, so here at Algorand, we do, in the sense of governance, every token essentially has one vote and is equal to every other token. So that is different from systems in which, there are some tokens which are more special than others, the ones which are bonded or put in the middle of the table. In Algorand, or whether you don't need to be in the middle of the table. If you have one token, you have one vote. If you have two tokens, you have two votes, because this is we are talking here about money. So, but we skipped the consensus, but I'd like to make a point about consensus. Like the original definition that Eric said, it was very labor intensive, but it was very profound to say. Everybody starts, what is Byzantine agreement? Everybody starts with one value in his head. Now we have a conversation. And at the end of our conversation, if the majority of the players are honest, all the honest people output the same thing. So what does this mean? And if everybody starts with the same thing, then they actually output that thing, right? So I don't know what is in your mind, what value is in your mind, you don't know what is in my mind, we talk, at the end they say, okay, I tag in. And the answer is 27. I automatically know that who else is honest among you? And I don't know who is honest, but sees the same 27 number that I locally have out. Okay? That's his Byzantine agreement. So, but the process of this discussion required 1 round of discussions, 2 rounds of discussion, 3 rounds of discussions. How many rounds? As many bad people we want to tolerate. So if we have, say, a discussion with a million people, 300,000 of which may be dishonest, you have to talk 300 plus 1 time. Can you believe it? Of course it takes too long. So Mr. or Mrs. Nakamura had this beautiful idea, so we are going to change consensus. We are going to go into this, think of it, diluted consensus. You never reach consensus, but once the fact that I attach to David's block and David's attaches his block to Eric's block, then gives us at some point in time, you say, well, there may be a fork, but the longer we go, the more clear we'll reach consensus on that block, right? And that was actually much faster than having 300,000 and counting rounds of communication. But it never quite reached consensus. It was always more and more and more probable that we have actually agreed on something. It was a diluted process. So the pendulum went from this part up to this proof of work. Now the pendulum is swinging back. Why? Because one of the advantages that David and I have is that we've been around for a long time, and so somehow I was around when the Byzantine agreement was actually started a debate. By the way, by another physicist. So there must be some reason the physicists attracted to Byzantine agreement. I actually started in physics too, then I changed to mathematics. I don't know why. So in Algorand, we agree on our goal. What does it mean? What are these values that we have in our hands? Assume that we have somehow k blocks in the sequence, and our idea is what is block k plus 1. Based on these k blocks, I see a bunch of valid transactions which are gossiping around. I see, oh, this is valid, this is valid, this is valid. I compile this list. To me, this is the block. This list is the next block. David has seen more or less the same transaction that I've seen, because But not, perhaps, however, we may disagree a little bit, right, in 10%. Because some transaction goes first through me and then to him, and some transaction by goes first to him and then to me. So we have a little bit of this here, but but his list is maybe very similar to mine, but it's actually a different list. I cannot just, we cannot have this ambiguity, and so on and so forth. So, who has the right to attach which block? And in Ireland, we do something very bizarre. You know what? We agree on a block. So, if we started with the same value, fine. If otherwise, we talk and talk and talk until we agree on a block. This talking, however, is super fast. That's how. So we actually agree on a block. Why do I tell you all that? Because if you look at this label, it's not a diluted process. Input, we want to agree on a block. Discussion, block approved. Next block, next agreement. Next block, next agreement. We have a general agreement process. On what do we agree on? On anything we want. So 99.9% of the time, we agree on the next block. But we have the ability to agree on anything we want. In particular, how about a change of a protocol? Are we in favor or not? We agree on that. Or do we want to adopt a new monetary policy? We can adopt on that. By the way, we have a mechanism to implement governance. I want to be honest with you. This workhorse, this mechanism is not governance. It is a tool for governance. But governance is chosen by the people. So we must figure out how do we put the thing. So, and this is a social process. I have no better ideas than you have, and we should discuss maybe to see. But let me tell you what at least what I'm thinking about. And you see when the workhorse comes from. The workhorse doesn't solve the problem because it's a human problem. So I really believe that we are going to have a foundation, right? And the foundation is going to have, say, think about economic governance, an economic committee. The economic committee is going to have 3 people rotating. Everybody's in charge for 3 years, so every year somebody says, bye-bye colleagues, I go do something else, and somebody else is elected. So how do we elect it? We vote on the thing. So now we have, and so what they have is the ability, which is a little bit decentralization, but actually on guidance, to say, these 3 people committee have the power of proposing to the community a new economic policy. That's what they should do. That is a great power, because we can vote and agree on anything you want, but somebody has to tell, what are the options, okay? These guys give options. They propose an option, they register on the blockchain. We must give, say, I'm making it up, 6 months to discuss, but having put it on the blockchain at time T, you know that 6 months later, a block number N, we shall be a vote on their proposal. You know, that is better than nothing, but it gives a lot of power to this economic committee. What if I am an Algorand user, I'm not part of this committee? Sure, in 3 years the committee will be new and I can vote some other member, but what if I don't feel represented by this committee? It can happen. Then I have the right to coagulate according to, they never put to vote my proposal. I have a great idea for the board for economic governance. They never propose it. I feel underrepresented. What do? I find, I'm making it up again this number, 5% of the tokens who are in agreement with me. And if I prove a certificate that 5% of the tokens want to put to vote this proposal, I put to vote my 5%, and now I'm becoming as powerful as the committee itself. They don't have the monopoly of proposing what to vote on. If you get enough a percentage of voting in your favor, you have the right to force a vote of the community, and in 6 months later, the community expresses itself, and that is binding. So, but the way I see it is that it has to be a mechanism, and there has to be a social mechanism to choose all these things, or what to unleash the power of this voting.
So if I may, I just had just 30 seconds. So just a one sentence answer to a question in terms of governance, and I'll answer first. Basically, we all have a consensus algorithm, we all have platforms, right? And governance is basically, okay, who makes the decision, what the decision is, how they make the decision. Now, in our case, for example, pricing or the roadmap, we have 39 companies that make the decision, whether it's to change the pricing or whatever in the platform. So, in one sentence, who chooses if things need to be changed, whether it's the platform or the consensus algorithm or code?
Practically, it's a foundation of representatives of all the participating members of the network. So rotating membership representation from our validators, our users, our token holders, our developers.
The community.
Yeah, with token vote representation.
Well, it's a pity to have to say so, but these governance structures you just heard are modeled after the way nation states are governed, and this, in my view, is a failed model. So what is like a better way to do it is to have a system that allows anyone to propose an issue and to have basically voting on the issues that will be put to the public vote. So it doesn't have the kind of inherent plutocracy aspect that these other systems have. You don't need a lot of money to try to get something on a ballot like we have in those few cases today in nation-state governance that do actually allow ballot initiatives. I'd like to make another comment, but I look at, if you love the way government works today, then that's fine. But when you're starting to deal with something that has potentially a much greater complexity, which is all the different code updates, the type of governance that we have today is inadequate for it. So you need a kind of system that scales with the complexity and the size of blockchain. So modeling after current systems or modeling after corporate governance is probably not the way you want to go. And I'd like to mention one other thing though, because you see, democracy for the last couple hundred years has been based on the idea of secret ballot. None of the systems that we have in blockchain today allow for secret ballot, and moreover, blockchain itself can destroy secret ballot globally. If you can pay people, you can buy votes from people in other countries using digital currency, you can just kiss democracy goodbye. So what's actually needed is a voting system that allows what's called secret ballot. That means you cannot sell votes. The only known way to solve that is something that I invented, I'm sorry to have to say, but this is done with what we call decoy ballots. It's what we use in random sample voting. So anyone can get decoy ballots. They're indistinguishable in perpetuity from real ballots, and they can then be sold with impunity to basically drive the price of bought votes down. So there's academic referee publications by people at Harvard on this that support this approach, and it does work. And you'll love this, the basis for it, and it's a subtle thing, but we have to have something which is called proof of decoy. Sounds like a blockchain concept. So in other words, just being able to give out indistinguishable decoy ballots is not enough. You have to have a way to convince the person who's receiving the decoy ballot, who's going to then try to sell it, that it is in fact a decoy and will not be counted. So by a separate channel, you have to provide them a proof that it won't be counted. Otherwise, the entity running the election can give real ballots to people and tell them they're decoy ballots. Those people will tend to sell them to people on the opposite side of the issue from them, and that way, the entity running the election can manipulate the outcome. So actually, if you want democracy in governance, you need ballot secrecy, which strictly implies the ability to prevent vote selling, and the only way to do it that I know of is by using decoy ballots, but in order to use them effectively, you need proof of decoy. So we built all this and deployed it in the Council of Europe election, and it seems to work fine.
Who votes? Who actually votes? Who does the There's some voting goes on. So who are the voters?
Okay. So you can say, and I think that the Algorand approach is quite elegant, to say, well, plutocracy is a great system, and the more money you have, the more votes you should have, and that is exactly the corporate governance rule. If you know how stock, corporate governance works, it's all based on the number of shares. There's no, and these are transparent elections. I don't think that's the kind of thing that you want for governing something that has people's personal information in it, that can control the prosperity of individuals and their digital sovereignty. So what you need is a way to allow actual democracy. And so then the question is, okay, can the votes be civil attacked? And this, I think, is what you're wondering about. So
one token is one vote, so what you do.
yeah, I think.
Right, I think like everyone needs like proof of stake here, but let's just finish the conversation. Can like Sylvia briefly. I mean, the governance is such a philosophical thing, so I think we can talk about over like wine whole night, right? Because even like when the French Revolution happened in 1789, and we came all the way, and we are right now in democracy. And some people don't think this is the best, like the governance, right? So again, it's a very philosophical. I want to hear more, to be honest, but because we have a limited time, I just need to listen to Silvio briefly, and then we need to go on to the next conversation.
I'll be brief. Okay, so guys, there is a lot of, so we must dissect issues, making them small in order to talk to them deeply and solve them. So now we're going to say political democracy. Well, a blockchain is a cryptocurrency is not a political democracy. I'm sorry. If you want to do some of these tools, you can use them to implement politically. But if you have an economic system, it is only right that the people who have invested more and believe it more, they actually have a bit more to say how the money is going to be governed, okay? So, are we going to export, and what do we do about democracy? That's a different problem. It's a political problem which has nothing to do with this, it's a cryptocurrency. Second of all, clarification number one. Clarification number two, David is absolutely right. If you want to vote, privacy is important. But I want to talk about something even earlier than privacy, which is whatever I think that Sami and Eric were discussing. We can vote with privacy and with decoy in the right way that David tells us to vote, but who chooses the damn topic? So that is the problem. That is the problem number one. Who puts the topic? Now, to the point of it saying, it isn't going to be a path to decentralization. It can be decentralized. So my proposal would be, as long as there is a foundation and there is three people rotating, let these three people propose them. But guess what? Even in a traditional representative democracy that David despises, people once in a while they figure, those people in the government were elected for 4 years, they don't represent me. What you do have? You have a remedy, which is a referendum. You bypass everybody and you do you propose a referendum. A referendum is a very complicated system today in a democracy. If I go to Rome and I want to go back home and see a few arts and temples and churches and paintings, I'm stopped all the time if there is a referendum because they ask me to vote. And there is a bunch everywhere you cannot walk We have a bunch of notary publics who interview, we want to read your ID, we want to know your dot, sign here, and this signature has to be verified that you have not double voted and so on and so forth. It's an expensive property. So what do we want here instead is, again, adding technology at the service of society. I may want to do one thing. You must have 5%. Forget the initial step of this committee. What I propose, at least in Algorand, using Algorand tools, because that's the tools we have, but at least it's going to work as follows. I want to have 5% of the community, of the tokens, to propose an issue on which to vote. How am I going to do? So talk around, so are you a community member of Algorand, and so would you want to, it's going to be impossible. So what I'm going to do on the blockchain, an issue, you say, if you feel that this issue is worth forcing a vote of the entire community, self-select yourself. The same cryptographic lottery, which we recommend to select the committee, now you can self-select yourself by the same mechanism to express, I'm in favor of this vote. And if all of a sudden a few votes by something, which is the true way to do this, show up, and this small sample proves that there is out there a 5% consensus that that is an important issue, now, 6 months later, everybody selects themselves to vote on that issue. So, privacy, absolutely, but before that is on what are we voting, and so this mechanism that I'm proposing, I think is really direct, because you cannot just say, anybody can propose something to vote. I leave a blockchain and do something else because everybody say vote on base, vote on base, vote on base. No, you must have a certain number of people that realize it's an important issue. Otherwise, we'll keep on voting, voting, voting. I prefer to be a subject of an empire than a citizen in which everybody can force me to vote every hour of the day. So I think that is so. Initially, I think that will be this representative democracy. It's a bit classical. But that is just to get started. But then later, what I think that we do is a direct way. But we must distill first what is worthwhile voting by proving that there is an initial consensus of say 5-10% you decide, and then you do the rest.
Great, thank you so much. Really, I mean, it's such a great opportunity that we are able to hear from the word blockchain growth on their philosophy on the governance and consensus. We just have to move on. I want to make it really short, just because, as Ari mentioned, technology is useless, even though they solve trilemma or whatever, if there is no use cases. And the next panel is actually the use case panel, and we have some of devs here are participating in the panel. So I want to know, number one, just very quickly, 30 seconds each, what kind of devs are building on top of your platform? Number two, what kind of sponsorship, what kind of things, resources do you provide to those developers? 30 seconds each.
I can go first. So, Hashgraph is a timestamping service, right? And so I come from traditional finance. The problem was dark pools. There was no fairness of ordering of transactions. And so any dApp that needs to know not just what happened, but when it happened. And so what kind of dApps are these? They're basically marketplaces. So we have, for example, advertising marketplaces, right? We have decentralized exchanges. We have, DeFi. We have basically transactions that need to be ordered. They're building on us. What we provide them is, again, we have a governing council of 39 of the largest companies and a very vibrant ecosystem. So we're kind of matchmakers. And so we connect these dApps to the biggest companies in the world so they can actually scale very, very effectively.
Awesome.
Great, yeah, so we're focused on performance, so any dApps that need performance, DeFi is queued right up there, high performance DEX, we throw all of NASDAQ on our blockchain and be fine. And then for providing them, we just want to provide them the easiest developing experience you can find. So we support C, Rust, and last thing, we've benchmark Libra's Move. We imported their Move protocol from their white paper. We benchmarked it at 3,000 TPS, and they hope to launch in 2020 at 1,000 TPS. But that's just Move. Our other native TPS numbers are much higher, but you can look at the website.
David?
Well, we do not have any dApps currently. However, we have a way to allow dApp engine marketplace based on our traceability messaging system, and we think that will be economical and easy to build to, and will allow dApps to become like the mini apps in a WeChat like user experience, where the same namespace is used for messaging, payments, and for the dApps.
Got it.
That's our vision.
All right, so as I said, I really believe not in payments, but in disintermediation, right? So who is building on us and why? So we launched it 3 months ago just to prove to the world we could have a decentralized, secure, and scalable system. That's it. Done this. Why people want to build on us? There are 200 projects. Let me tell you. One is asset block is tokenization of real estate. Another one is IREX, which is decentralization of decentralized exchanges. Securitize, which are security tokens. But first of all, we are going to bring in a way to do your own tokens in Algorand. Oh, yes, but we are not the only one, right? So everybody has the ability to do tokens. The question is, what do you do? What tools do you give me to manipulate the tokens? Why should I do tokens in Algorand versus something else? Oh, because we give you some tools to actually disintermediate and transact reciprocally, not just unilateral payments, but back and forth. So for instance, this November we are going to add to the Algorand these atomic square swaps. What is an atomic square swap? It's an atomic swap that finally is really atomic. So by a single transaction, you and I can exchange my asset for your asset. Here, nobody can cheat the other because it's a single transaction. You start giving tools like that, and then people will come. Because you cannot just say, oh, you want to have an atomic swap? I have that very interesting smart concept that I want to propose. Really? How long will it take? How costly will it be? Thank you, but no thanks. So we must give, not only tokenization, ability to issue tokens, but actually to transact very simple, a layer one, and in a really atomic way. So speed is not enough. What we need actually is ease of use, very rich layer of templates that people can use right away, or at least if you don't find the ready-made what you want, you can assemble in a very simple way a layer one solution to solve whatever thing you want to do.
Right. Again, thank you so much for joining the panel. I mean, we learned a lot, and I'm really excited about all the use cases that built on top of this great project. So please give a round of applause to all our panelists. And we'll have a second panel, Korean and English. So thank you again. So, yes, because we're going to actually use cases of blockchain. So I want to invite Bina Cho from APM and Patrick Kang from Elinet and Han Kim from Precision. Just let's jump in. Again, it can be in Korean. Please, yeah. So can you give us a quick intro? We have some slides to make it